You're listening to End of the Road in Michigan, where we explore the forgotten stories, faded photographs, and haunting echoes of the past that shaped life on the Great Lakes. Today, we journey back to a stormy September night in 1860, a night that began with music and laughter and ended in silence. The sinking of the Lady Elgin was the deadliest Great Lakes shipwreck of its time. Nearly 300 lives were lost, many from a single city, Milwaukee. Their stories, of hope, of heroism, and of heartbreak, have echoed across generations. This is their story. The Lady Elgin was no stranger to the waters of Lake Michigan. Built in Canada and named for the wife of the British Governor-General, she was considered elegant and fast, a symbol of mid-19th century steam travel. Her long white hull stretched 252 feet, her side wheels slicing through the water with grace and power. For nearly a decade, she ferried passengers and freight between Chicago, Milwaukee, and the ports of Lake Superior. On September 7, 1860, she left Chicago just before midnight, bound north. On board were more than 350 people. Some estimates place the number closer to 400. Among them were members of Milwaukee's Union Guard, city firefighters, local musicians, and families. They had attended a rally for Stephen A. Douglas, a prominent presidential candidate, and were returning home. The air was festive. A band played on the forward deck. Passengers danced. Laughter echoed through the cabins. But above the lights of the steamer, storm clouds gathered. At 2:30 a.m., about 10 miles off Waukegan, Illinois, in a rain-swept darkness, the schooner Augusta, loaded with lumber and running without full lights, collided with the Lady Elgin midship on the larboard side. The impact was catastrophic. The music had stopped, wrote H.G. Clory, the ship's clerk, and in half an hour, the steamer sank. The crash tore open the side of the ship, damaging the paddle wheel and hull. Water flooded the lower cabins. Some passengers were thrown from their beds. Others ran toward lifeboats in the darkness, some barefoot, some still in formal wear. There was no time to organize a proper evacuation. 2 lifeboats were launched. One carried 13 passengers. All were saved. The other held 8. Only 4 survived the violent surf. Most passengers clung to debris, deck planks, cabin doors, pieces of railing. A large section of the upper deck floated for a time, carrying as many as 25 people. Among them was the ship's captain, Jack Wilson. Survivor accounts paint Wilson as a man of calm courage. He helped women into boats. He ordered his crew to break open cabin doors and search for life preservers. A survivor wrote that he saw Wilson cheering the passengers and later washed off the deck. He drowned within 100 feet of the shore. We'll be right back to our story after this message.
Love this story? There's more waiting for you at Michigan4U.com, your online guide to Michigan and Great Lakes history. From ghost towns and shipwrecks to lost resorts and backroad legends, we cover the stories that make this region unforgettable. Head to Michigan4U.com and start your next deep dive into the places and people that shaped the mitten. That's Michigan4U.com, where Michigan stories live.
Welcome back. Let's continue with our story. At sunrise, the scene along the shoreline was grim. Debris washed up on the beach at Winnetka. Rafts, lifeboats, and fragments of the steamer floated near shore. Reporters counted 50 or 60 people clinging to wreckage. One survivor remembered the sound of the waves breaking on the shore, just yards away, as he drifted in and out of consciousness. Another said the lake was filled in every direction with pieces of the wreck and people holding on. Back in Milwaukee, word of the disaster reached the city by telegraph. Panic spread quickly. The telegraph office was jammed with family members. People waited for names. Lists of survivors, often incomplete or incorrect, were published in newspapers. In Milwaukee's First Ward, it was said that scarcely a home or business had not lost someone. Entire families were gone. Churches filled with mourners. Funeral bells rang for days. Among the lost were prominent citizens. Herbert Ingram, publisher of the Illustrated London News, and his son, were both aboard. So was Colonel F.P. Lumsden of New Orleans, editor of the Picayune, traveling with his wife and children. They, too, were gone. And yet, many survivors owed their lives to random luck, or to the actions of strangers. Michael Smith of Ontonagon recalled being awoken by a watchman and rushing to the deck. He and the first mate found a hole just above the waterline. They tried to plug it with canvas, but it was too late. I think nearly every passenger got out, Smith later wrote, although I pulled one out as we floated by the stateroom. The Lady Elgin broke apart not long after. A city in mourning. A lake in silence. In the aftermath, the Augusta was held liable and libeled for $40,000. But there were no criminal charges, no sweeping reforms. Maritime law was still in its infancy. The lake had taken its toll, and then moved on. Only 98 passengers survived. More than 280 people were lost in a single night. In Milwaukee, the memory of the Lady Elgin has never fully faded. It marked the end of innocence for a city growing fast and proud. It became a cautionary tale of nature's indifference and human error. But it also became a story of bravery, of people who faced death with dignity, and of a captain who stood at the edge of safety and chose to go back. To this day, a historical marker stands along the bluffs near the wreck site in Winnetka. It's a quiet place, easy to miss, but for the families who still remember, and the historians who still write, the Lady Elgin remains more than a wreck. It is a story of how quickly joy can turn to sorrow, and how deeply a city can grieve. Thanks for joining us for this episode of End of the Road in Michigan. If you found today's story moving, subscribe to